After 3 years of studying abroad, my family dragged me back home for a blind date. The girl across from me was beautiful and sweet. She apologized, explaining that her protective older brother had insisted on coming along. Her brother was giving me a strange look, but I just offered a polite smile and said it was no problem. He scoffed. "Of course it's no problem," he said coolly. "Someone who can get pinned under a car for 2 days and still make it to class isn't going to have an issue." I watched as the girl's face went from pale white to an awkward shade of green. "You two know each other? What does that mean?" I didn't want to get into a sham marriage, but I also couldn't humiliate my parents in front of their business partners. "I was in an accident while I was studying abroad. Got pinned by a car for 2 days," I said, my face a perfect mask. I was once again impressed by my own ability to bullshit on the fly. "Pinned by a car for 2 days?" Hannah covered her mouth with her left hand, her pretty face a mask of shock. "Are there any long-term effects? What kind of car was it?" "An RV," Ethan said coldly, his gaze growing darker. "Clothes and blankets strewn everywhere. The main side effect is intermittent amnesia." The conversation wasn't going anywhere, so I excused myself to the restroom and slipped away from the table. I had just pushed open a stall door when a pair of hands wrapped tightly around my waist, pulling me into the same cramped space. These hands knew my body all too well. One kneaded the waistband of my pants while the other brazenly tried to force its way into my mouth. "You came back for this? When you were screaming my name under me, Leo, did you forget you had a family business to inherit?" Ethan's warm lips grazed my ear, but the words he whispered were as cold as a knife. I completely understood why Ethan was so angry. After all, I was the one who had started it. When I first moved to the UK, another student from my school had warned me about a notorious trust fund kid in our circle. His GPA and his character were inversely proportional. He had a terrible reputation when it came to relationships, and the number of guys and girls who'd cried over him could stretch from here to the other side of the Thames. I just nodded and went back to figuring out where to put my new bed. I was the one who made the first move. During an elective, desperate to find a partner for a group project, I tapped an Asian guy in the front row on the back. It was only when he turned around that I realized he had a dazzlingly handsome face. I explained my proposal, but he didn't agree right away. He just propped his head on his hand, looking at me lazily, and asked if I knew who he was. I didn't give a damn who he was. Maybe my silence got lost in translation, because he eventually agreed and asked for my number. For the next few weeks, he never contacted me, until 2 days before the deadline. When he showed up at my apartment empty-handed, I was furious. Maybe because I didn't want to admit I'd been waiting for him for weeks. He looked a little tired, but he still had that devil-may-care look on his face. "Been waiting long?" A flicker of regret went through me. Things were slowly spinning out of my control. "Where's your stuff?" I scanned him from head to toe, seeing no place he could possibly be hiding a laptop. "Not so fast," he said with a smirk. "You go take a shower first." I walked out of the bathroom completely bewildered. A second later, he shot out from nowhere, pinning me against the wall and kissing me. Ethan's bare, muscular chest was pressed against mine, and for a moment, I couldn't tell whose heart was pounding harder. In the struggle, I saw him pull a small, square packet from his pants pocket. He bit a corner off with his teeth. So that was what he brought. As the tension mounted, I pushed him away with all my might. "This isn't what I asked you here for." I clutched the collar of my shirt, which he'd nearly torn to shreds, and pressed myself against the wall behind me. He let out a soft laugh at my words. He released the hand that had almost reached the edge of my underwear and casually leaned against the wall next to me. He was shirtless, and sweat trickled from his neck down the lines of his skin to his solid abs. "So you really did just ask me over to do homework." He had a beautiful smile, but it sent a chill down my spine. "Too bad. You got the wrong guy." Ethan got dressed even faster than he'd gotten undressed. By the time I processed what was happening, he was already opening the door. I couldn't let him leave. My grade in this class was crucial. Besides, I really didn't want to get stuck doing another group project with a bunch of randoms. The moment he stepped out the door, I lunged forward and grabbed his hand. "If we do this, will you do the homework?" He looked down, not responding. Anxiously, I followed his gaze and realized that in my haste, I'd grabbed his pants. "If you know how to do this," he said, his hand gripping my chin, his voice coming slowly from above my head, "I might consider it." My blind date with Hannah, naturally, was a bust. Everyone in my family, from top to bottom, blamed me. I knew business had been tough the last 2 years, and that tying up with the Hall family would make things a lot smoother. But I also knew that Hannah was originally meant for my older brother, Isaac. He insisted on marrying the woman he loved, so the blind date with Hannah was pushed onto me. My brother had always been a man of few words, proud and resentful of anyone who tried to dictate his life. He hated me making noise under his nose and hated it even more when I stepped into his room. I learned to read his expressions from a young age and never brought up our relationship in public. So when my father was deciding on the company's new leader, I didn't hesitate to apply to a school in the UK. I don't like working, I told my father 3 years ago, and I especially don't like competing with people. All my hard work in school was just to have a chance at controlling my own destiny. But as it turns out, while education might change other people's fates, it couldn't change mine. The day I packed my bags and moved out of the house, I got a call from an unknown number. "Which lucky lady is our little lordling meeting for a blind date today?" The tone was flippant, but it was as suffocating as his hand around my neck in bed. I hung up without a word. A moment later, I heard my mother's overjoyed voice from the courtyard below. "Oh my! What wind blew you here, Mr. Hall?" "An ill wind." Ethan walked through our front door carrying several expensive gourmet gifts. He said he was here to apologize on his sister's behalf. But he was dressed like he was here to ask for my hand in marriage. That evening at dinner, for the first time, nearly the entire extended family was at the table. They weren't there for me, of course. At the table, he expertly answered my relatives' questions. The only time he fell silent was when my mother asked how we met. I had no intention of picking up that conversation, so I just kept my head down and ate. Maybe my ostrich act pissed him off. Under the table, he stealthily slid his hand into my pants pocket, pinched the back of my thigh through the lining, and quickly pulled away. "We met in bed," he said with a perfectly pleasant smile. "On a boat," he said, "on a boat." A mouthful of rice nearly went down the wrong pipe, and a cold sweat broke out on my back. By the end of the meal, he had charmed every elder into a beaming smile. Anyone who didn't know better would have thought he was our family's real youngest son. Only my brother, Isaac, kept shooting me looks I couldn't decipher. Ethan hadn't been this difficult back in the UK. That night of the misunderstanding, he went late into the night. Several times, I grabbed his strong arms, wanting to look up and tell him, we should probably start the homework, but his increasingly forceful movements always pushed the words back down. I passed out a few times. When I woke up, I gathered my things for school while he was still fast asleep. I looked at his peaceful, sleeping face, then at the blank document on my computer. It was all I could do not to punch him. "Get the hell out of my apartment." He just rolled over and continued to sleep, looking completely harmless. I could accept getting screwed over, but I couldn't accept getting scammed. I walked to class with a strange gait, mentally rehearsing excuses for my missing assignment and sincerely hoping Ethan had actually fucked himself to death, just like all the other fuck buddies who had cursed his name along the Thames. The white-bearded professor didn't press me about being late. He just told me, as I was apologizing, that he had seen the assignment and it was very well done. I submitted the assignment? Couldn't believe my ears. The professor said I had. The night before. The same night I'd passed out several times. Suddenly, I didn't know how to face Ethan. I had no reason to chew him out, but thanking him felt weird, like telling a customer to come again. Luckily, he didn't show up for that class for almost a month. I went back to my simple, repetitive life, and that night gradually faded into a surreal dream. The next time I saw him was at a senior classmate's birthday party. He and the person on his arm were both gorgeous. "Leo's here," my classmate Mark called out loudly. I tried to make a run for it but was dragged over to a seat to play the tackiest party game of all, Truth or Dare. When the beer bottle spun to Ethan, the girl in his arms was feeding him a strawberry. "Yes. Finally. Give him a good one." The crowd cheered. French kiss the person in this room you're most attracted to for 1 minute. Someone shouted from the back, and the whole place erupted. Do it. Do it. Ethan gently removed his hand from the girl's waist and took a sip of his drink. Then, in the dim light, he looked up, licked his lips, and stared straight at me. Shit. No way. Everyone's attention immediately shifted to me, and people started whispering. Just as the murmurs grew louder, he suddenly pulled the girl beside him closer, his body leaning forward aggressively. Amid gasps from the crowd, he completed the kiss. And from the beginning of that kiss to the end, his eyes never left mine. I no longer understood the meaning behind my own tumultuous feelings, so I retreated to a corner and started drinking in self-abandon. You can't drink anymore, Mark said, looking at me with concern. I'll take you home. I was clumsily helped out of the apartment. My body passed like a limp noodle from one person to another until I landed in a strong, warm embrace. Half asleep, I heard a low voice ask me, "Leo, how are you going to thank me?" I forced my eyes open, trying to make out his face. I had to be dreaming. Why should I thank you? The alcohol made my tongue unruly, and my words came out slurred. He seemed to smile. Why do you think? My head was throbbing, and I couldn't be bothered to argue with someone in a dream. Thank you, huh? I remembered he had just kissed someone else. I reached out, fumbled for his warm lips, and wiped them hard a couple of times. Is that enough? I climbed from the passenger seat onto his lap, dragging my leaden body as I grabbed his jacket and started kissing him. Did you hear what Ethan said at the dinner table? Huh? I snapped back to reality. My mother was talking to me. What's gotten into you? Did you leave your ears behind when you went abroad? He said his company has a small project they want to work on with you, and that you should go to his office tomorrow to get the details. Honestly, why didn't you tell us you knew Ethan sooner? Look how much trouble this saves. She glanced out the window in the direction Ethan had left. With a little back and forth, a partnership here, a favor there, after a while we can introduce him to your cousin. Then we'll be in-laws after all. She clapped her hands together, the sound of her abacus clicking away in the air. He has a fiancée. You should probably just give it a rest, I said with a yawn, deliberately ignoring my brother's gaze and my mother's surprise as I shut myself in my room. I thought the partnership was just him running his mouth, but a few days later, he pulled his car up right in front of my house early in the morning. What are you doing? Picking you up for work. I thought Ethan had lost his mind. He escorted me to a desk directly opposite his office. Before I could even get settled, he leaned his whole body over me. Do you have... God, he's like a dog in heat. I swung my elbow back forcefully, but it hit nothing but air. Ethan pulled a file out from behind me, straightened up, and looked at me, completely bewildered by my comical gesture. Have what? Damn it. He's messing with me. Read through this file and schedule my week by 2 o'clock this afternoon. And then, can I leave? This time, he really did lean down and plant a feather-light kiss on my cheek. Depends on your performance. And just like that, I ended up working at Ethan's company for a week. It started with simple tasks like arranging his schedule, then moved on to reviewing basic project proposals. Later, Ethan even had me sit in on high-level executive meetings. In short, I was doing things I would never have had the chance to touch at my own family's company. Since it was work I was interested in, I was more or less happy to do it. Although my family's message was clear, if I dared to refuse, they'd remove me from the family tree. During my time as Ethan's scheduler, I discovered something else. I didn't know Ethan at all. At work, he'd say, no personal calls during work hours. At lunch, he'd say, I want your bowl. Mine has green onions. I rolled my eyes. Mine has poison. During our afternoon break, he'd add, you need to report to me anytime you leave the office. I have to go pee, I'd retort, not backing down. But he'd still find ways to nitpick. You need to look professional at work. I'm taking you to get a suit tailored after we get off today. Turned out he was an incredibly annoying boss. I could tolerate any reasonable demand at work, but Ethan had a stubborn fixation on my clothes. The first day I wore the custom suit to work, I felt strange looks on me from the moment I walked through the company doors. Is there something wrong with how I'm dressed? This was my first time wearing a suit, and worried I'd made a fool of myself, I asked a female colleague from a downstairs department I was somewhat familiar with. "Oh no, not at all," she said, as if surprised by my question. "It's just, you look too good," she added, covering her mouth and squinting her eyes. "No way." Still skeptical, I immediately started checking my clothes once I got to the office. "You take this," a familiar voice came from outside the office door. Ethan fell silent as he pushed the door open and saw me. "Take what?" I loosened the tie that was practically strangling me. "Never mind." Ethan tossed a file onto my desk. "Go home right now and change out of that suit." His Adam's apple bobbed, his eyes holding a dark gloom I couldn't decipher. He personally took me to get it tailored, and now he wouldn't let me wear it. What a strange person. On top of that, Ethan's workload distribution was completely uneven. On most weekdays, I could clock out on time, often earlier than most people in the company. But as soon as the weekend hit, he'd find all sorts of reasons to keep me at the office. The formatting on this document is hideous. Read next week's schedule to me again. I forgot. I can't find my jacket. Find it for me. Still can't find it? Let's go out to eat first then. And then, after we'd get back from dinner and I'd spend another half-hour searching, he'd say casually, "Oh, I probably forgot to wear it today." Thanks to him, my personal time on weekends dwindled to nothing, and I had no time to meet any Miss Chan or Miss Gu. On another Sunday, Ethan dragged me out of bed early for more overtime. He even specifically told me to wear the suit. Why do I have to wear this again? Didn't you say it wasn't appropriate? I had no idea what was wrong with him now. What am I, a cicada, shedding my skin all day long? "The right time has come," he said with a smirk, but I couldn't tell what he was up to. "Studies show that the longer a company's employees work on weekends, the faster it goes out of business," I said irritably. "Even a workhorse needs a break. I suggest you think about the long-term prospects of your company, Mr. Hall." "It's not my company," Ethan said, putting down the financial report and leaning in to look at me seriously. "It's our company." He leaned down, his gaze dropping to my lips. He reached out his thumb and wiped my mouth. Then he showed me what he'd wiped off, a grain of rice from breakfast. The next second, he pushed his thumb into my mouth. I flinched as familiar, unwelcome memories flooded my mind. "Get off. Stop disgusting me." I tried to push his thumb out with my tongue, but it was no use. I stiffly turned my head away. "Have I done so few disgusting things to you?" he murmured, pressing my tongue down with his thumb as he moved closer. "Do you know why I made you come in on a Sunday? Because no one else is here today." Ethan's breath ghosted across my neck. Just then, the phone rang. After taking the call, Ethan straightened his collar and reverted to his usual gentlemanly demeanor. "You can leave once you're done with what you're working on." Ethan glanced at me, his hand landing heavily on my head. "I won't be back for lunch today, so don't wait for me." I wasn't planning on it anyway. For some reason, I felt he was acting strangely after that call. At noon, just as I was packing up to leave, I ran into Ethan's driver, Charlie, in the elevator. He was drenched in sweat, clutching his phone and looking completely frantic. I couldn't help but ask what was wrong. He stammered, "Mr. Hall needs me to pick him up right now, but my daughter's been waiting at daycare for ages. The teacher said she's been crying for half an hour. The traffic is awful at this time. I don't know when I'll get back." The man, who was well over 6 feet tall, suddenly started to sob. "I'm the worst father in the world." I sighed. "I'll go for you. After all, I didn't have a kid, and it wasn't likely I'd ever be a father in this lifetime." I took the keys from the profusely grateful driver and drove to the location Ethan had sent, the Regent Hotel. It had been a full 2 hours past lunchtime, and I only just realized I was so hungry I'd gone numb. I looked out the window at the palace-like hotel, my mind connecting it to the phone call Ethan had taken that morning. Maybe it was his father, calling because the company's latest financial reports weren't looking good, or maybe his escapades in the UK had been exposed, and he'd hurt the feelings of some corporate scion, and now he was in there apologizing. I hoped that scion, whoever they were, had more backbone than me and was giving Ethan a hard time. He shouldn't have it so easy. My resentment for the rich and handsome found a satisfying outlet in my imagination. Half an hour passed, and Ethan still hadn't shown up. I wasn't going to torture myself any longer. Spotting a small cart selling breakfast wraps in an alley across the street, I got out of the car to buy one. As I walked back, holding the warm, fragrant wrap, I suddenly pictured Ethan, too busy to eat. I'd been working at his company for nearly half a month now, and no matter how busy he was, he never let me miss a meal. Fine. I owed him one. One more, please, I said to the vendor. I ate one and carried the other, strolling back to the car. As I got closer, I saw two people standing by the door. I recognized both of them. One was Ethan. The other was his fiancée, the woman he'd kissed during that game of truth or dare. What are you doing here? For the first time, I saw genuine surprise on Ethan's face. I really shouldn't have been there. In fact, I suspected that in the entire world, at that exact moment, there was no one less suited to be there than me. The woman beside him seemed to notice his change in demeanor and began studying me with a look that made my blood run cold. Charlie had an emergency, so the car service sent a replacement. I blurted out, desperate to break her gaze. My talent for bullshitting was kicking in again. Ethan's expression flickered between light and shadow, but in the end, he just got into the car without a word. What did you think of lunch? I thought it was pretty good, just like it used to be. Grandpa will probably like it, the woman next to Ethan said. So they'd already eaten. What's that? Ethan asked, ignoring her. Huh? For a second, I didn't realize he was talking to me. What? In your hand? Perhaps because he was sitting in the shadows. His words carried an inexplicable chill. Oh, a breakfast wrap, I said calmly. I'm not blind. You didn't eat? His tone suddenly turned stern. I ate, I replied, too tired to say more. Then who is that for? I could feel the woman's probing gaze on me again, but Ethan seemed determined to get to the bottom of it. A fire of nameless anger ignited within me. I suddenly felt pathetic and even a little wronged. But mostly I just felt like I deserved it. It's for my son, I said brazenly. Wow, I can't believe it. You look so young to have kids, driver, the woman chimed in, her voice sweet and pleasant. A son? With whom? How come I don't know about this? His icy tone was colder than the air conditioning. I gripped the steering wheel, feeling like his stare was about to burn two holes in the back of my head. With my blind date, of course. Mr. Hall, you probably don't know, but people in our line of work get married young. Once I started lying, the inspiration just flowed. After all, we're always out early and back late with our bosses. Who wouldn't want a wife and kids and a warm home to come back to? That's true. People with stable jobs do tend to get married earlier. I actually did a research study on this in college, the woman said, smiling at me through the rearview mirror. Ethan didn't say another word for the rest of the drive. After chauffeuring the two VIPs and a car full of bizarre tension, we finally reached the company's parking garage. Just as I was gleefully waiting for them to get out, I heard the woman say, I need to buy some souvenirs this afternoon. Can your driver take me? Her tone was casual, but I had a feeling she knew everything. I was, without a doubt, the one who should feel the most guilty. I felt like I should be on my knees apologizing to her. Yes, of course, I agreed without thinking. But just then, the silent Ethan finally spoke. He's off the clock. I was so screwed. I had never been so sure of anything in my life. When Ethan pushed himself on top of me, my shoulders slammed hard against the steering wheel with a dull thud. I had never seen him like this. Right now, he was less human and more like a ferocious beast. Get off. I gritted my teeth, trying with all my might to push him off me. A tearing pain shot through my lower body, making me tremble uncontrollably. The second the woman left, I had anticipated what would happen and quickly unbuckled my seatbelt. Unfortunately, with Ethan, you can only ever predict the upper limits of his actions, never the lower limits of his character. From the back seat, he yanked the seatbelt I had just loosened and wrapped it around my neck. Every move, every bit of force, made me think he genuinely wanted to kill me right then and there. His large frame crushed me, making the spacious seat feel claustrophobic, like a dark, volatile cloud enveloping my world. I struggled desperately to escape, but he pinned my hands tightly above my head. Are you insane? I managed to squeeze a bit of air from my lungs. Ethan didn't answer. He swiftly pulled the tie from my collar and used it to bind my struggling hands. What the hell do you want? His thrusts became more powerful, and my body gradually grew numb to the pain. The air in the car grew thin, and my head started to spin. Want to do? Before I blacked out completely, I heard Ethan's dark, cold voice in my ear. I'm gonna fuck you until you give me that son. The good news is I didn't die. The bad news is Ethan was the one who took me home. The even worse news is my brother was the one who opened the door. I would have rather died. Using all my strength to control my trembling legs, I moved from the living room to my bedroom under my brother's watchful gaze. The moment I was inside, I collapsed to the floor. A moment later, the door opened again. The way the person outside looked down at me made me feel like a piece of unsorted trash. Is your entire life just about taking pleasure in stealing other people's things? As far as I could remember, this was the first time my brother had initiated a conversation with me since we grew up. But I knew better than anyone that he'd wanted to say those words since we were kids. I didn't answer. It wasn't stubbornness. I just couldn't figure out where exactly I had gone wrong. Just like when I was a child. I lay motionless on the floor while my brother watched me quietly from the doorway. In this house, the only things flowing were time, air, and the evening entertainment news from the TV downstairs. Breaking news. The mysterious fiancé of the Hall family heir has returned to the country. Sources say wedding bells are just around the corner. The next day, I went to Ethan's company as usual. Huh? Is Mr. Hall not in yet? I asked a subordinate manager who came by to drop off a file while I was plugging in my computer. He's on a business trip today, I said, looking up. He'll be back next week. If it's not urgent, you can just leave it on his desk. Okay, I'll just leave it with you then. It's a good thing you're here. Mr. Hall is always so busy he's impossible to find. He shook his head and sighed. If you hadn't told me, I'd have no idea where to track him down. I knew because I was the one who made Ethan's schedule. But I wouldn't recommend he leave the file with me because I was about to leave. I slowly packed up the things at my desk. I hadn't been here that long, but I'd accumulated a surprising amount of stuff. Looking at the contents of the cardboard box, I suddenly thought back to a few years ago, when I was moving by myself in the UK. After the birthday party, Ethan rarely came to that class anymore. But whenever a group project was assigned, he would miraculously appear at my doorstep. We never asked each other any personal questions or got involved in each other's social circles. But every time a deadline loomed, we did the most intimate things, including the homework. Slowly, I began to realize that he was actually very calm and intelligent. A decent guy, even a bit childish at times. His only flaw, perhaps, was how much he could torture someone in bed. This strange relationship lasted for more than half a year, until one day he called and told me to come downstairs. And so, on a snowy winter night, I was handed a small plastic bowl of sweet rice balls. I don't know how long he had waited downstairs. His eyelashes were already dusted with snow. It's the Lantern Festival today, he said, his breath forming a white cloud in the cold air. The snowy night was freezing. I shivered for a moment, and he stepped forward, wrapping me in his large coat. The world was so quiet you could only hear the sound of the falling snow. Then, I heard him whisper very softly in my ear, "Wait for me." I didn't understand, and I didn't dare take it seriously. Later, the class ended. The new semester brought the headache of moving. My current place was just too far from campus. There were many things to worry about, like whether it was even necessary to move just to shorten my commute, and whether I should tell Ethan my new address. While I was torn, Mark came to visit me, bringing a piece of news. Ethan had a fiancée the whole time. You saw that beautiful woman sitting next to him that day, right? He asked, turning to me. The one he kissed. Apparently, it's an arranged marriage from when they were kids. Well, that settled it. I had nothing left to worry about. After Mark left, I spent the whole day staring blankly in my room. In the end, I never moved, because my parents soon ordered me to come home for the blind date. I snapped out of my daze and looked at the file that had just been placed on my desk. I was about to casually toss it on Ethan's desk, but my hand, of its own accord, flipped a few pages back. That one flip was all it took. I saw my own name on the document. It was the height of summer, but my body felt like it had been frozen solid. I knew what it was, of course. It was a non-disclosure agreement. So he had planned it all along. He wanted me to maintain our secret, sordid relationship while standing by and keeping my mouth shut about his perfect marriage. Aren't you coming down yet? My mother knocked on my bedroom door for the second time. The guests have all arrived. Today was the opening ceremony for one of my family's small businesses. As dusk fell, the courtyard below was already bustling with guests. Long time no see, Leo. A familiar face called out to me as soon as I came downstairs. Mark, I said, surprised. My family just told me yesterday I had to come to this thing. I had no idea, he said, clapping me firmly on the shoulder. So you're a little rich kid. Huh. But anyway, why'd you go back home without saying a word back then? He picked up a glass of red wine from a nearby table, the liquid catching the blinding light of the setting sun. Family emergency. It was all very sudden for me too, I said with a forced smile. You have no idea. Mark scanned the crowd, then leaned in conspiratorially. After you left, Ethan asked everyone in the entire study abroad circle if they knew where you went. Everyone was terrified. I mean, it's Ethan. He squinted, turning his head to take a sip of wine. I thought something was fishy, so I went to your place. And guess what? For a second, I forgot how to breathe. I ran into him at your door. He was just sitting there on the steps. Who knows how long he'd been there? A faint smell of wine wafted from Mark's mouth. That was huge news at the time. Everyone was speculating about what was going on between you two. The sky had completely darkened, and the decorative lights my family had set up earlier flickered on. At this, Mark let out a long sigh. Leo, you really had it rough back then. The hairs standing up on my back were practically stabbing me. To think you were secretly doing Ethan's homework for a whole semester, Mark said indignantly. Huh? For a moment, I thought my ears were broken. If it hadn't been for some classmates from your school spreading it around, we all would have thought he was in love with you. You really can't judge a book by its cover. Who knew the great heir of the Hall group would need to hire someone to do his homework for him? Mark got angrier as he spoke, his wine-scented breath hitting the side of my face. To go to such lengths to find you, how scared must he be of failing a class? What a loser. I wiped the cold sweat from my temple. Actually, and that's not even the most disgusting part. Did you know Ethan started a new company this year? It's only been open a year, but it's expanding like crazy. Especially that new green energy division. Mark put his glass back on the table, his voice dripping with contempt. Everyone knows it's all thanks to his fiancée in name only. Green energy? As I recalled, I had pulled 3 all-nighters just revising the project proposals for that. You just wait and see, Mark said, clapping my shoulder again. A guy like him, it's only a matter of time before he kicks his fiancée to the curb. After all, if he was going to make it official, he would have done it a long time ago. Hearing this, I almost felt a little sorry for Ethan. But I had no intention of defending him. Not necessarily, I said, picking up my own glass. The evening breeze swept away the summer heat, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of inner peace. After all, when it comes to feelings, if they were going to break up, they would have done it a long time ago. I booked a flight to a small town up north without telling anyone. I said nothing, and my family asked nothing. It was a remote city almost on the border of 3 countries. The mountains and water were beautiful, the people were simple and kind, and the sun didn't set until nearly 10 at night. I spent the most liberating days of my 20-plus years there. I even met a boy 2 years younger than me. The town's environment had made him tan and healthy. He told me to call him Gus. Gus lived on the floor above me and ran his own noodle shop. I often went down to help out when I had nothing to do. Gus never asked where I came from or how long I was staying. He only ever asked if the noodles were good today or if the meteor shower last night was beautiful. One cool evening, I was shelling beans for him in the shop when the old TV suddenly switched to breaking news. Hall Group founder in critical condition. The octogenarian faces imminent asset division. Rich people, I swear. Even dividing up their assets is a huge ordeal, a customer in the shop muttered. How many branches of the Hall family are there now? Is the old man's eldest grandson married? Another customer chimed in. I think. I walked quickly out of the noodle shop. By the time Gus found me, the cigarette had burned down to my knuckles. What's wrong with you? He asked, pulling the cigarette from between my fingers, a couple of sweat drops rolling down his tanned face. I didn't know what was wrong with me either. What was even more terrifying was that, from that day on, every time I went out, I had the faint feeling that someone was watching me from a hidden corner. You're cursed, Gus declared after hearing my worries. He insisted on taking me to a famous local shrine to calm my spirit. I couldn't argue with him. The shrine was halfway up a mountain. I was panting by the time we got there, and I dazedly followed Gus through a round of prayers. What are those? I asked before we left, pointing to a pool filled with floating lotus lanterns. For making wishes. They're super effective. Do you have a wish you want to make? Gus asked without turning back. A wish? I didn't think so. My life never went in the direction I planned. I was used to it. Wishes led to expectations, and expectations led to disappointment. But, come on, Leo. You can't be this pathetic, can you? I walked a few more steps in silence, then turned around just before I reached the exit. Gus, wait for me here. I lit a lantern for Ethan. I know you want to curse me out because I was doing it to myself. As I lit it, I cursed myself for being so pathetic, while at the same time anxiously making sure my actions were correct, that I looked pious enough. The moment the lantern was lit, I quickly pressed my hands together. When I came out after making my wish, I ran right into a tall figure. I tried to step aside, but he grabbed my arm tightly. I turned my head in surprise, but the moment I saw who it was, my legs went weak. This wasn't the fucking wish I made. Was it? You sure move on fast, Ethan hissed, his grip on my wrist feeling like he wanted to eat me alive. He looked like he'd just been working out. His head was covered in sweat. His suit jacket was draped over his arm, and his collar was loose. He looked like he'd just run out of a board meeting. The out-of-place attire made him look slightly ridiculous, and also a little pitiful. How did you know I was here? I had blocked him on everything. Sir, please let him go, Gus said, walking over immediately when he saw us squaring off. This is what satisfies you now. Ethan glanced at Gus and let out a contemptuous laugh. Only then did I see the dark circles under his eyes. He's my friend. You better show some respect when you talk. I snapped. I had no idea what Ethan was so mad about. Friend? He lifted his chin. The kind of friend who does your homework for you, or the kind who helps you with your physical needs? Ethan was practically crushing my wrist. Or is he like me? Both? You're really insane. I didn't want to argue with him anymore and tried to yank my arm out of his grasp. Seeing this, Gus lunged forward to pull me away. My arm was being pulled painfully between them, but Ethan just stared at me, showing no sign of letting go. In that critical moment, my foot slipped, and my head slammed hard against the shrine's threshold. Damn it. How could one person be so unlucky? I woke up. No rebirth, no amnesia. I just woke up. You're awake. Before my eyes were even fully open, a tall figure once again loomed over my field of vision. But even with my eyes closed, I knew who it was. I tried to pull my hand out of his, but he only gripped it tighter. Looking at our intertwined hands, I suddenly felt exhausted. He's holding my hand now. Is the next step to guide my hand to sign a contract? I irritably opened my eyes to glare at him, but then I saw that wrinkled suit again. God damn it. He was the one who played with my feelings over and over again, and I was the one who gave him chance after chance. Neither of us was any good. I don't want to see you again, I said, turning away without another word. Ethan didn't leave, and he didn't listen to me. He rented an apartment on the floor below me without a word. No matter how early I left or how quietly I moved, I'd see him in the lobby when the elevator arrived. What a coincidence. You again? I was finally starting to understand that when it came to being shameless, Ethan was in a league of his own. After about the 10th time this happened, I couldn't help but be passive-aggressive. Already married and you're staying out of town for so long? Mr. Hall, you're not very considerate of your wife, are you? The elevator fell silent. In that moment, I regretted it. I realized I wasn't ready to hear the answer. He smiled. Why? Do you care? Ethan looked down at me, his eyes searching mine. Damn it. I lost. After leaving with me, he would usually work at the coffee shop next to the noodle shop. What is he even doing? Gus asked me more than once as he cleared the tables. He's got nothing better to do, I'd answer irritably. That was a lie, of course. Late at night, the thick, pungent smell of smoke would often drift down from the balcony above, sometimes mixed with the sound of him in meetings. I didn't know what he was holding on for, and I didn't have the courage to ask. Maybe I was just afraid to force the issue, only to discover there was never anything there for me. We had no promises, no agreements, not even a clearly defined relationship. Under these circumstances, any further probing would only make me look ridiculous. Last time it was, do you care? This time it could be, I'm just trying to win back a useful employee. In this silent battle, I was destined to lose from the start. This went on for over half a month. One day, I left as usual, but the elevator didn't stop at the ground floor. I didn't think much of it. After getting busy at the noodle shop for a while, my phone buzzed in my pocket. Leo, Ethan isn't picking up his phone. Can you see when he's free? It was my mom. Why are you looking for him? I was completely baffled. Oh, don't play dumb. My mom's tone immediately gave me a bad feeling. The money issue is resolved. Your father keeps saying we should treat him to a meal. The money issue? My scalp tingled. You borrowed money from him? Honestly, child, wasn't this something you two discussed together? It turned out that at the beginning of the month, my family's new business venture had run into a cash flow problem. He was the one who had contacted my parents right away. The beginning of the month. Right when he had moved in downstairs. My brain just shut down. Leo. Leo. Gus ran in frantically from outside. Thank God you're here. Gus immediately relaxed when he saw me. Did you hear? The apartment building we live in is on fire. By the time I rushed back, I was trapped behind a massive crowd, my legs completely weak. I screamed at the nearest firefighter that there was still a resident on the 17th floor. Thick smoke billowed from the building. Among the throng of people, not a single one looked like him. I collapsed to the ground on the verge of a breakdown. Why? Why today of all days? Why him? Why did he help my family but keep it a secret only from me? The cold breakfast wrap, the group project marked submitted, the untouched iced tea from our blind date, memories of him flashed before my eyes in a chaotic jumble, ending with a bowl of sweet rice balls on a late lantern festival night. I scrambled to my feet and pushed through the crowd, running toward the building. Hey, sir. Leo, it's dangerous. The voices of warning around me grew louder, but I could barely hear them. Until, Leo, what do you think you're doing? Turned out Ethan hadn't even been home that day. After the fire was put out, the three of us went back to the noodle shop. After hearing what I said, Ethan just chuckled. Worried about me, were you? He still had that smug look, as if nothing in the world could ever faze him. How the hell was I supposed to know what you were thinking? The scare had been too much. I couldn't control my emotions anymore. I went back to the city for a few hours this morning. Seeing my state, Ethan gently patted my back. Was it about my family's business? I wiped my tears and looked up at him. His handsome brow furrowed for a second, but then quickly relaxed. Your mom told you, huh? Who gave you permission to do that? Why didn't you tell me? I was more serious than I had ever been. Are you telling me you've never done things without my permission? Ethan shot me a look. That's no excuse. All right, come back with me, Ethan said, grabbing my hand. I'm not going back. I couldn't put this off any longer. Thank you for your help this time, but I still hope you can just let me go. I clenched my fists. Ethan, I have my own life, and you have your own wife. I knew I should have said it long ago. It was only today that I had finally gathered the courage. It was time to let that London snowstorm finally melt away. Who the hell told you I have a wife? After a long pause, the only thing I got back was a look of utter bewilderment from Ethan. It's all over the news. I scrambled. unable to find any solid proof. Ethan sighed and rubbed his forehead. So you didn't sign that agreement because of this too? I had never met such a shameless person. Don't even talk to me about that thing. There are plenty of fuck buddies out there who can keep a secret. You got the wrong guy. I turned to leave. A fuck buddy who can keep a secret? Did you even read the entire document? I didn't need to. He grabbed my shoulder, and I struggled to break free. Just then, he suddenly let go of me and smiled. Leo, and here I thought you were supposed to be smart. I was back at Ethan's company, a place I thought I would never return to. When Ethan placed that document in front of me again, I realized just how ridiculous I had been. The first part of the file was about a share transfer. The page I had randomly flipped to was just a standard confidentiality clause. When he said, "It's our company," it had been part of a plan, not just a boss making empty promises to an employee. I was speechless. I even began to wonder if Ethan and I were just star-crossed, missing our chance through a series of misunderstandings. The fiancé was indeed arranged by his grandfather when they were children, but both of them were in love with other people. His grandfather's health was poor in those years, so they had to put on a show, not daring to let the media report that the engagement was off. Like that kiss at the party, performed while he was staring at me. "She's not into men," Ethan said, watching my expression as he reached out to stroke my ear. The sudden intimacy made me uncomfortable, and I turned my head away. "And you're not into women," I added sourly. "Not entirely, but then you showed up." He dropped his hand. His sudden honesty made me break out in a cold sweat. "Then why didn't you tell me sooner?" The moment the words left my mouth, I regretted them, because I remembered he had told me. He told me to wait for him. But back then, I was too cowardly to believe it was a promise. "Okay, I'm sorry. Let me say it now." Strangely, he didn't take the opportunity to mock me. He walked around the desk that separated us and knelt down beside me. "I'm single now. I don't have a fiancé, and I don't have a wife who needs someone to keep secrets for. And in front of me is Leo, who went behind my back to go on a blind date, then ran off to another city to hide from me for months. I hope that in the future, he won't go around making wishes behind my back. If he has a wish, he can just tell me directly." He pulled a piece of paper from his pocket and slowly unfolded it. It was a good luck charm from the local shrine with my name written on it. "Finally, I hope he can forgive me."